Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to this December 19th, 2017 meeting of the Sustainability Commission of the City of Palm Springs. Welcome all of the commissioners here and also everyone who is here in the public. As we begin tonight's meeting, I'd like for us to take a moment of silence as we remember our former colleague, city staff member, and staff member assigned to the Sustainability Commission, Michelle Mycian. We learned just during the first days of December of Michelle's death, and she was quite a force for, I think, 7 years or so on the city staff as the manager of the Department of Sustainability. Many of us worked with her either on the commission or in volunteer capacity. So if we could take just a few moments and remember Michelle and her family. Thank you. We will come back to some further discussion about ways that we will remember Michelle later in the meeting. Our newest commissioner is Commissioner Santora. He has taken his oath, and I've asked him if he would lead us in the flag salute. So if you please stand. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and the republic for which it stands, one nation, indivisible, with liberty and justice. Dan, if you would do the roll call, please.
Chair Jackson.
Present.
Vice Chair Clark.
Present.
Commissioner Friedman.
Present.
Commissioner Gauthier.
Present.
Commissioner McCann.
Present.
Commissioner Futterman is excused. Commissioner Goins.
Present.
Commissioner Wilson.
Present.
And our newest Commissioner, Santora.
Present.
And our student representative, Dare Shea, is here with us tonight as well. Thank you. The agenda was emailed to all of you and posted last Thursday per city regulations. Is there a motion that we accept the agenda as presented?
So moved.
And moved and seconded by Wilson and Santora. All in favor say yes.
Yes.
Opposed say no. Abstain, and the agenda is accepted. We have a number of staff reports and comments, and our first one is Stacy Schaefer, Director of Facilities, Maintenance and Facilities, who is coming back. You know, we just can't get rid of you, can we? Lucky you. So we're delighted that you are here. So talk to us about the cogen plant. Where are we?
Accepted it yet. We have not formally accepted the plant, although we have in the last few months started working with the engine on. And we've had a little over about a month now of the majority of the time having the engine up and running and receiving the benefits of that. Majority of the kilowatts that we're currently generating actually are going towards the airport, so we're offsetting some of our energy costs over there. Clearly, we receive benefit from having the chiller up and running, which has been pretty consistent for the last few months. We are obviously still working with AQMD. There's some additional catalysts and some other options that we're working towards to make sure that we're exactly within compliance with AQMD, since this is such a highly technical and relatively unique type of plant. They've been great. They've come out and met with us. They've sent engineers out to meet with us and work with us. So we're actually going to be having a meeting with them probably in January. We're working on variation of the permit. And once we get through that whole process, then we'll look at final commissioning. But right now we are receiving benefit from the plant.
And so it occurred to me, Stacy, that maybe you should say in 4 sentences exactly what the cogen plant is, since we have some brand new people on the commission and the public here.
At the northeast corner of our parking lot, we have what's we also call the municipal plant. That municipal plant, we have a municipal plant, and which is a combination of our chiller plant, which supplies cold, chilled water, chemically treated water for City Hall, Fire Station 2, the airport, police station, and that's it. And we also have tie-ins for potential cogeneration. We have an engine in there that actually takes the heat jacket and converts that into electricity. And we have the potential to provide electricity to City Hall, Fire Station 2, airport, police station, and the city yard. This has been a very long process. The former plant had been, I believe, over 20 years, probably 25 years, a heavy pollutant, wasn't performing properly. And in 2008, 2009, the city did a citywide energy analysis. Found that as part of the citywide project, aside from lighting retrofits, water conservation efforts, that the rebuilding of the plant was going to be a good, viable option for us. And since that time, the plant that we have right now, even though it's not in full operation, has currently, when it's up and running and everything's beautiful, we will have 94% reduction of our CO emissions and 96% on our NOx, which is amazing, obviously.
So, commissioners, are there questions of Stacy that you want to ask? No.
Exciting.
Okay. Commissioner Friedman.
Commissioner, would you please use your microphone?
Thank you very much, Jay. May I suggest that when it is back up and running, that you organize a tour for the new commissioners, perhaps, and those of us who, that just may be worth sort of taking, just to sort of see what it is, if there's interest in that, because I did find it interesting, and actually kind of forgot since it never really worked, I kind of went out of my memory, but I wouldn't mind having a tour when you guys are comfortable that it's up and running.
And actually, right now, the hiccup we have right now, we're hoping to have fixed by Thursday. It's a little clog in one of the lines on the urea line, but once that's up, you can have it running with the engine for a tour, which is just excessively loud, or you can come in now when we have just the chiller run. We can do a tour anytime. There's no restriction on that. So you guys just let me know when. We'll definitely do that.
Other questions? Yes, Commissioner Goins.
So one of the reasons why I was curious to get an update from you is because this cogen plant is a large part of our budget. And so I was wondering, you said the permitting will happen, it'll be commissioned, then permitting will happen. And is that the time when maybe another update might make sense, or when would a...
Right now, we do have permits. We have valid permits. Obviously, we couldn't operate. What the city, we need to make sure that we're 100% in compliance with AQMD. We haven't reached our comfort level with that yet, as well as substantial completion overall of the project. There was a lot of moving parts. We have accepted the lighting retrofit citywide, and we've accepted the renovation of the parks, basically the watering system, so that they're synced up now with satellites, and they have all those methodologies to reduce water and all those emissions, and that's been great. And we've accepted all of those layers. It's all one big project that actually started with the Sustainability Commission years ago. The actual cogen being the final piece there. As right now it stands, our permit is probably 6 months out before we're looking at a new revised final permit. And of course, we're hoping at the end of that period, then we'll say, yes, we're going to get a third party in, finalize everything, and then commission the plant. So that would probably be midsummer, early summer.
Others?
Dog park is opening on Saturday.
Okay, good, great. Thank you. Thanks for taking time to join us tonight. And so next we have our report from our staff assigned to us, Jay Verrata. Jay.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The first item has to do with one of our commissioners recently withdrawn or resigned from the commission, and I believe.
Here. Sure. I mean, if that's fine. He was going to do it in public comment, but now's fine if that's
I
what you'd
see.
like. Nope, that's fine. Come on up, Michael.
Sorry. Yeah, new microphones. Great. I'd like to start by thanking Chair Jackson and all the commissioners for all the the great work that you do. It was what inspired me to join this commission in the first place. Kind of watching from afar and seeing what was being done, for the benefit of the city. And in an interesting twist, that's what led me to where I am now. Because as many of you know, when I joined this commission, I was leading a relatively low-key life, just running an organic food manufacturing business and enjoying life out here in the desert. But by joining this group, it made me realize how much I miss working with a group of committed citizens and professionals to make improvements, make lives better for people who they're representing. And so for you, that is the city of Palm Springs, and it was really inspiring to be a part of this, and quickly got me thinking, well, I'm not done with this yet. I'm going to get back into my former field. So formerly I was a professor at a college, and I wanted to get back into that and make a difference, in my case, with the students that we serve. And it just so happens that I have, this position that I've taken. By the way, if you're not familiar with it, I'm an academic dean. I'm the dean of mathematics, business, and engineering at Citrus College, which is in Los Angeles County. And we've relocated to Claremont. We were hoping to, maintain a residence here for a while, and I was trying to commute. It just wasn't working. So we've relocated to Claremont, and I did intend to come and address the commission soon after I got the position in September. I believe that's in the minutes from the last meeting. And I apologize for not being here in September and not communicating, because it was just kind of a whirlwind of things happening. But the governing board for my college meets on the third Tuesday of the month, typically, except for this month. So there was a conflict there, and I wasn't able to make it. But anyway, back to what I was talking about. What's really interesting is that I stepped into this position during what is probably the biggest reform in higher education mathematics in the history of higher education in California. Within days of me hitting the ground, laws were being passed in Sacramento, moves were being made at Cal State, the Cal State universities that are affecting the community colleges, and we're in the middle of a major reform effort that is going to benefit our students greatly. And you're going to see that out here with the College of the Desert, and you're going to see, hopefully, much greater success rates amongst our students overall. So in closing, again, I just wanted to thank all of you. It was a pleasure to serve on the commission. I wish I could have stayed longer, and it was a great inspiration, and it led me back into academia. So best of luck to everybody, and I hope to be back in the desert again someday.
Thank you, Michael.
As you also may have heard, the city council had been contemplating creating liaisons for each of the commissions of the city. Discussion was agendized for the last city council meeting. However, they did not get to this particular item. So we'll probably know by January 3rd at the next city council meeting. On the next item I'd like to report on is the sustainability brochure. I think everyone's had a chance to review and comment, so we'll be taking it to the next level. And finally, we've received a sponsorship package from the Southern California Energy, Water, and Green Living Summit, which will be local, right here at the Agua Caliente Casino Resort Spa in mid-January. So we were contemplating a sponsorship, I believe, at $2,500, and just wanted to pass this around for you to.
And I think we do have that on the agenda, I thought. Pardon me? Oh, it's just here. Okay.
Had mentioned it to me, and we were just wanted to do a $2,500 sponsorship, a $500 booth, or just a table.
All one package grant.
All right. So, okay, I thought we had put it under new business, but I didn't catch that. So, if you want to finish your report, we can circle back to this.
And that concludes my report.
Oh, okay. All right. Okay. So, so this is it's sort of advertised as a 2-day event, but really the January 10th is an evening expo and at the Living Desert, and the January 11th event is the real thing from 9 to 1:30. Sustainability Commission in the City of Palm Springs was a part of this event some years ago. 2 years ago, and it was located, I guess, at the convention center at that time. Those were in our more flush financial days, and I'm not sure. Perhaps we did pay the $2,500, or perhaps because it was here in the City of Palm Springs, there may have been some in kind. I don't recall. So, can this actually be before us without it appearing as an item of new business, or not?
Let me just inform you also that there are other options there, which include just having a booth at the event for $500, I believe. Higher form of sponsorship. So that is something that that would probably have to have more further discussion on the agenda, but it is an item that I believe staff had done in the past independently.
Okay.
So those are some of the options, and I think I'm hearing, some concern.
Well, I don't know. Why don't we just take 2 minutes and hear if there are comments from commissioners, and you can at least get a sense of the commission as you then make a staff decision. Is there a sense from any of you that you'd like to offer? Commissioner Goins.
I don't think the $2,500 expenditure would be that much of a hardship for us from a budgetary perspective.
Other thoughts?
I agree with John, and I also think it would be important for our visibility to be a sponsor.
I have a question about
Yes, Commissioner Santora.
about the prior experience with the participation in the event. Did this commission take part? Did the staff have a booth? What was?
We were present with the sponsorship includes a booth, so we were present with the booth. We were staffed during the entire time of the event. We were listed. The city and the Sustainability Commission were listed as sponsors, and all the graphics and that sort of thing. And it's a pretty high profile event. I mean, typically they get some decent speakers, and if my memory serves me, I would think there might have been 500 to 700 people there. It's hard to recall, but it's a pretty big deal. Yeah, Commissioner Friedman.
I did go, I guess when it would have been September would have been late September, early October 2016. I forgot the exact dates, but the last time they did it. Struck me as there was a fairly large attendance drop-off between what they had when it was at the convention center and to when it was in Rancho Mirage. So, and the program, and I actually looked yesterday to see what the program was. I don't think they posted actually what the program was. So what I would suggest, maybe to get a sense, but also to kind of speak to Josh Zipperman and find out sort of what their attendance is expected to be and what their program is. They canceled it in October, and I don't know whether they didn't have enough people or the expected speakers kind of fell out or whatever. I registered, and that was the last I sort of heard about it. I think there's a booth, and the booth is worth it for visibility, and I would probably just sort of my sense is that before committing to the 2,500, get some sense of what they expect attendance to be and who the speakers are, which will perhaps drive a little bit some of the attendance. I unfortunately can't go.
Yeah, well, yeah, those are some wise words from Commissioner Friedman. It's less than a month out. If they don't have a confirmed speakers and a definite program at this point, those are some questions to ask Josh Zipperman. And so if you can find that out. So I think you have a sense from us that a booth would be great, and you could certainly, Dan, be in touch with us about volunteers who might assist with that. But unless you really find out it's a going thing, that might be as far as we'd want to go.
Thank you.
Okay, Commission Liaison reports. Is there anyone here from Planning or Parks and Recreation? Okay. All right, we are at public comment. At each meeting of the Sustainability Commission, we have, I'm sorry.
When should I give a report? Or is there?
Why don't we do that right at the beginning of public comment? So let me make my public comment speech, and you're on. That's perfect, Dara. Thank you. So at each meeting of the Sustainability Commission, we have time for persons from that are present to address the commission on items that are generally a part of our purview. So we will open public comment, but we will first recognize our high school representative, Dara Shea. Dara.
So the last time I was here, I spoke with Chairman Joseph Jackson. Sorry, I'm very bad at public speaking, so trying to get used to that. But I was talking to him about creating maybe a survey for the teachers at my school to see where the recycling program is at. So I created a few questions, and I'd like to make a Google Forms survey that I can get all of the teachers to respond to. And I recently emailed my principal as well to ask him any questions or who I could talk to about sustainability if there's anyone at the school. So he should be getting back to me within the new year because we're on break right now. So
thank you. Great. So if anyone from the public wishes to speak, the time allotted is 3 minutes per person. And if you would give your name and your city of residence. Does anyone not know?
Hello, my name is Christine Hammond, and I'm here actually to celebrate. I think in years ago, this commission was very involved in working with non-motorized transportation issues. One of those was bicycles and bike lanes, and I think now we have a plethora of bike lanes around town, probably still not as many as we'd like, but a lot. And the other thing that this commission had talked about was walkability. And Chair Jackson had gone out and did a windshield survey, and I don't know if this is part of your lore, the commission lore, but I have been carrying this around for years. trying to do whatever I could do in my role on Measure J, or with, I have been a participant in, and I now chair the Code Enforcement and Public Works Committee with One Palm Springs. And I just wanted to say that after all of this time, 2015 to what is essentially 2018, some sidewalks are currently being filled in to create a more walkable area in a number of parts of town. So we don't have Baristo all the way signed to receive new sidewalks, but those households who are agreeable, and not every neighborhood agreed that sidewalks were a priority for them, there are about 6 months worth of projects in sidewalks going in, and I just wanted to share that with this commission.
Thank you. We appreciate the work that you have been doing to bring this to some next steps and conclusions. So, well, and I will say there is continuing work to do as I walked in the dark, since we have night skies lighting here. As I walked in the dark toward the Festival of Lights parade on Amato, lovely sidewalk, all of a sudden, big hole, dirt, dirt, just a couple of blocks before Indian Canyon. So, we'll continue to work on it. I think it is, but we'll talk. Yeah, we'll talk. Flashlights are good too. Thank you. Is there anyone else who'd like to speak in public comment? Declare public comment closed. We're at item A, welcome and introductions. At the last city council meeting, the city council did fill 2 of the 3 vacancies of the Sustainability Commission. We have 2 longer-term vacancies that will end on June 30th of 2020. And those 2 vacancies were filled by Commissioner Santora, who is here tonight. He was able to take his oath. And also by Carl Baker. Carl, would you stand up? I think, Carl, you couldn't be here for the whole meeting tonight, and maybe, I don't know if you have been able to take your oath or not, but we're glad you're here. At the January meeting, Carl, we'll have you introduce yourself as you'll be a full commissioner at that point. And so welcome to you. And Commissioner Santora, if you'd like to say a few words tonight.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just by way of introduction, I don't know whether the information from the interview was shared with all of you, but
none of it. So
none of it.
You're a total ghost
mystery
to us.
All right, well, I'll leave it there.
You can start with birth, but
No.
just do it in 2 minutes.
Okay. No, I guess the important thing for you all to know is a little bit about my background. I'm 41st year as a labor leader. Most of that time has been in Southern California. I've been around the country and back again. A lot of the work was in governmental affairs and in worker training. 2 city council members who were part of the interview were particularly interested in my involvement in workforce development. So to the extent that green jobs are a priority of this commission, and I could play a role in that arena, I'd be very happy to do that. I'm also interested in sustainable tourism for the city. So any of those areas that I could offer that expertise, I'm happy to do so. The agenda for this commission is very broad indeed. And so I am looking forward to learning a lot, and I hope that you'll be patient with me. Best of intentions with those questions, so I hope people aren't annoyed by that too much. But it's good to be here. Thank you.
Thank you. And Mr. Baker, we will be delighted to hear from you in January, and we want to welcome you as well to the commission. Thank you very much. We're at item B, presentation on safe, non-smoking public space and tobacco retail licensing. Just for the commission's information, in the spring of 2015, we did have some representatives from Riverside County speak to us on some of these issues. We need to postpone this presentation tonight because one of the presenters had a family emergency that just emerged in the last 24 hours. Dr. Tim Fishback is here. Tim, you want to raise your hand or just... so he's here to observe us tonight. He was one of the presenters, but the other two primary presenters couldn't be here. So we're going to push that to January so that all three of them can be present. But delighted you're here, and you can get a sense of how crazy we are on this commission and report back. Yeah. All right, we're at item C, the minutes of the November meeting were emailed to you, and I think there were a few corrections that were sent to Dan. Any other things we need to say about the agenda? Or I'm sorry, the minutes. Excuse me, the minutes. Is there a motion that we accept the minutes of the November 21st meeting? And if you were present, you can vote. Is there a motion to approve the minutes? So moved by Commissioner Friedman and second from Commissioner Gauthier. All in favor say yes.
Yes.
All opposed say no. And abstain. Probably a couple of abstentions. All right. Minutes are passed. Clearly, Gary Calhoun is wanting to celebrate the holidays, the last night of Hanukkah. He is ready for us to be out of this meeting in record time tonight. So we are glad you're at the table. You didn't wait to be called. Give us a recycling report,
Along
Gary.
those same veins, I have only one thing to report. We had our shredding event and e-waste collection event this past Saturday, and we only had 20 attendants for the entire 4 hours.
And you know, I don't know what we did differently this time, but I had several people say to me they didn't find that out that it was happening. In fact, I had somebody at a movie on Saturday say to me, "When is the next shredding and e-waste event?" And I said, it ended about an hour ago. And so I don't know if we did anything differently. I'm also wondering if the Desert Sun would give us some community service space, if there's a way that Palm Springs Disposal could put it on their website. I don't know what we might do, but I think this time around, word didn't get out. Now, maybe it was December and everybody was at Westfield Mall, but...
Well, those are very good suggestions.
I mean, I just, off the top of my head.
And I agree. We'll check out and see if there was anything that we did do or did not do that we had done in the past. But I will say this, the last two December events, last year we only had 42, this year we had 20. And I think part of the reason is it's the season. The other part is that we did not hold it in conjunction with Palm Springs Disposal's either fall or spring cleanup. So,
what's our next date, Gary?
It is the third Saturday in February.
Okay, all right. And maybe you know, Amy Blaisdell's pretty well connected, I hear. Maybe there are ways she could help get the word out too. I don't know. I'm sure it was on your sustainable city. So, well, whatever we can do would be helpful. Commissioners, are there questions you have of Gary Calhoun? All right. Thank you, Gary. All right, well, maybe you should leave the table. As I look at, we're into old business, and our first item is related to the construction and demolition ordinance, which Commissioner McCann, Vice Chair Clark, and staff have been working on. So where are we, and what do we need to do tonight to get this moved along? Who wants to speak? Commissioner McCann.
So where we are is we had a meeting with with Jeff Coors on December 6th to discuss this ordinance and the need for it and the current state of what happens to construction and demolition waste in the city of Palm Springs. We're all very happy to report that Council Member Coors was very supportive of this ordinance and getting it passed. And to that end, he advocated that the sustainability come back with a draft ordinance that then he will take to be an agenda item at the January 3rd. So with that direction from him, on December 14th, Gary Calhoun submitted a draft of the ordinance to our committee, the Waste Reduction Subcommittee. On December 18th, just yesterday, completed a revision with again this morning, and it is back out there. And so I think we're moving along on it on a timetable that may get it to Jeff and the rest of the council.
Commissioners, let me just report, we did some agenda planning just this morning, and I believe this item is anticipated for the January 24th.
Okay. A little more time then. Also, the commissioners got the draft last week, and if there are any questions from anyone, we are glad to take them tonight.
So are there questions? Commissioner Friedman.
I just want to, because you wouldn't have gotten until really into what, about 2 or 2:30 this afternoon. What I did was Gary did a great draft, working largely from the Desert Hot Springs ordinance, because I think that was the inspiration, and I think did that. So I kind of cleaned it up. I put it into Palm Springs format, sort of tied it up nicely with some of the things that we had discussed on solar about the Building Appeals Board, and then added a couple of suggestions that I found in Palm Springs. So the changes were not too much substance and just a couple of sort of things. I did have 2 questions that I think that I would like for this commission and then the subcommittee in particular to consider, that I reflected in the draft that I prepared and was circulated. There are 2 possibilities, I won't say conflicting, but one is you can get an exemption as of right because you don't basically are covered by the ordinance, and then there's what I would call hardship exception. I think one's an exemption and one's an exception. There is we have a hardship, so we're asking for discretionary relief for procedure, but in the draft and also not in the Desert Hot Springs ordinance, there is not a procedure to ask the compliance official or whomever to say that you actually don't have to comply, and it wasn't clear to me as to whether you have to fill in do the construction and debris plan and then say you're exempt, or whether there's some form of other procedure, because in the other one you can fill in a form or something, you get found 5 days later that you've gotten essentially a hardship exception, but I didn't see a procedure for saying that you were actually determined to be exempt. So perhaps given a little bit more time, I don't think that needs to be decided tonight, but I would ask the subcommittee just to think about that, and I would be available to help work on any text. But there isn't something, maybe in some other city's ordinance, there is something there. There is not in DHS, and I know you are largely working on DHS. So I noticed that. And the other point, substantive, that I raised, and I think, once again, asked the subcommittee to consider this. There's a provision for a performance bond, and if security and cash or whatever, and if I understand it, is when you apply for the permit and you submit your construction and debris plan, you're posting some form of bond, and you're supposed to get it back at the end if you've done what you're supposed to do. And it wasn't clear to me, or perhaps more accurately, there's an option. The DHS ordinance says to the extent if you don't fully comply, but you partially comply, you get the proportional amount of your security back. The other option for consideration by the subcommittee is, do you want to basically forfeit the entire amount because you didn't do what you were supposed to do. And I think that should be clear as to which route we want to go. Do we want to go the DHS route, or is it a total forfeiture, saying you didn't comply, we want to see compliance, so therefore you should lose that. My personal view is that we are trying to drive compliance, and the DHS sort of proportional refund allows yourself literally to buy yourself out of non-compliance. So I put that in brackets. It's language from DHS, but my personal view is we stop the sentence. You said you were going to do the 65% or whatever it's required by Calgary. You didn't do it. Sorry, you lose your security. So I've left that in brackets, but my personal view is not to go the DHS route, but simply say, sorry, you're supposed to do what we told you to do, and what Calgary, by the way, tells you to do. So I left that in brackets, but, we'll leave that for the subcommittee to, do whatever tweaks. So I'm available just because I seem to be pretty good at writing staff reports. So if there's any usefulness of me helping out on the staff report or working with you guys, or sort of remain available for these sorts of things. That explains the changes, which once again I realize you didn't get till 2:30 or so.
Other questions from commissioners? Yes, Commissioner
Will you
Gauthier.
be recirculating the revised draft? Because I had edits on the draft that we received, but they likely were taken care of by you, so.
Other than two capitalized words, I mean, I can, take out that thing and then recycle it. And then there's some stuff, there's some legalese that I think is probably not necessary, and that's our discussion with Eddie Kotkin, because there's all sorts of things about civil violations, and given the hour, I didn't have time to do further research on the city code, but largely those are provided for in the building administrative code. And my rough view, certainly based on looking at that when we did the solar ordinances, because it gets dropped down into Title 8, it's in the building code, and because it's essentially a lot of stuff around what is already a Calgary Section 804 requirement, that largely, I think most of that can go away, whatever. So perhaps I'm available just to sit with staff and do some final tweaks and then send the draft. If you guys want to schedule another subcommittee meeting, I'm happy to sit down with you and do whatever appropriate. That's really up to the subcommittee, but I remain available.
Shall we just leave it to the subcommittee and staff to sort this out? You now have a little more time, and if things happen like they normally happen, whatever we send will not probably be the finished product. After council deals with it anyway, it will probably have some other things, but we'll leave it to you all to sort out what you want to get to council in its best form. Any other questions about the nature of this resolution and where we're going? Yes, Commissioner Goins.
I may be saying something here that's a little philosophical, and this train may have already left the station, but I just want to put it out there and see if it raises anything. But I think this ordinance and ordinances like it are a great opportunity for this commission to build in some economic sustainability into our programs and projects. And I don't know if this is the ordinance, the best ordinance to do that, if there is a way to do it. But I wanted to throw that out there and say that as we create ordinances and make moves like this in the future, that we have that in the back of our mind. I know that the mandates are what's driving this ordinance, but it could be a win-win if we could figure out how to make the ordinance become a growth opportunity for a business here in the city.
I guess I would respond to that with the ordinance as it's written now includes a preferred hauler program, which is PSDS. Up in Desert Hot Springs, 90% of the new projects have gone with this preferred hauler program. So that would be an economic win for PSDS.
Vice Chair Clark, did you have a comment?
A more general comment. There's another piece of this that we have to talk about, when we spoke with Councilmember Coors, he asked us to provide for the City Council not only a draft ordinance, but also the report that was written by our committee. And we discussed the report at our meeting in November, and there were a few comments about it, and we've updated the report. But I believe the action for us tonight is to the report so that we can then forward it on to the city along with the ordinance. The one change.
If you can, well, once you finish your comments, if you want to make a motion, we'll recognize you to do that.
The major change we made was on the second page, sliding requirement for a percentage of C&D waste. And I think from David that we wanted to make sure that the ordinance was tied to the latest laws, and we did put a statement in there about including the requirement in the city building code, which is updated every 3 years. I don't know that that's most relevant, but I believe that the draft that we have of the ordinance that Gary wrote is really complete in terms of referring to the state requirements. But that was the only thing that we addressed, and I think we've addressed it satisfactorily.
I can confirm, just in my tweaks, it does refer to Calgary. So as Calgary ratchets up the requirements, basically what happens is Calgary does its stuff along with the other codes. The next cycle is 2019, effective January 1, 2020. City Council in the fall of 2019 will adopt all of the codes by reference, and so then they become implemented in binding on the city. So by referring to Calgary, and the entire Calgary is then incorporated by reference in the building code. So that does work, and I did look at it yesterday with based on what Gary had drafted to make sure that that was taken care of.
Well, actually, do we need a motion to simply direct staff to forward our committee report to
If you would,
council?
please, that would be
a motion would be great. Okay, sure. Who would like to make such a motion?
I will. Motion to
Yes.
advance our report to City Council.
Second.
Okay, second from Commissioner Santora. Any further discussion? All in favor say yes.
Yes.
Opposed say no. Abstain. And one abstention. All right. And so we are directing staff to forward our subcommittee report. All right, we're at item 2. Commissioner Futterman is ill tonight, can't be here. We don't have any further report on film festivals tonight. Item 3 is about the sustainability booth for the farmers market. Dan sent out a doodle poll. Anything you want to say about that doodling you're doing?
Well, I didn't get much on the return on the doodle poll, but I did talk with Commissioner Futterman this afternoon, and she was stating that basically, you know, like others have said, that we just need to pick a Saturday, and we can have 2 shifts, one from 8 to 10, another from 10 to 2, 45 to 10, 10 to 12:15. We just need to pick, you know, first, second, third, or fourth Saturday. So, and who can do it? You know, so I don't know. Like I said, I got like 2 people respond. So,
sure. Well, why don't you and Commissioner Futterman look at the calendar, pick Saturdays, and do we want to start as early as January? Was that what somebody was thinking, or pick some Saturdays, a Saturday each month, and if you and Commissioner Futterman concur, just send it out with a schedule. You're thinking of having 2 shifts so that people would not do more than a couple of hours or a little more than a couple of hours. Somebody would set up, somebody would take down.
right.
Yep. All right. Why don't you just get that figured out and send it out right after the first of the year, and we'll all salute.
All right.
Oh, yes, please, Vice Chair Wilson.
From the
Clark. I'm 6 months old, aren't I?
he can have the job back.
Vice Chair Clark.
From the doodle poll, it looked like you had actually selected the second Saturday. Is that correct, or is that a misinterpretation?
That's probably a misinterpretation. I've never done a doodle poll before. It wouldn't allow me to say first, second, or third. You have to pick dates, actual dates. So I was picking every Saturday for the next 3 or 4 months, and just to see who would reply, and
Because it looked like you had checked a couple of dates, which were the second Saturdays, and you had put your name there, so I just assumed
that was more like an example, I think, so that people would see, that I had picked the second Saturdays, but I think I'll talk with Commissioner Futterman. If there's any Saturdays that you definitely cannot, of every month that you do not like, let me know, and we'll try to work around that.
Yes, Dara.
Saw your email, and I saw that only a few people had put down their dates, but I wasn't sure if I was allowed to participate in that, or just I should just come to the farmers market to show my support. I wasn't sure.
You are welcome to help us staff this booth and any other times that we are doing a booth. So that'd be great.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And I also just wasn't sure with the shifts. Is someone there in the morning and then someone's there towards the late morning, towards afternoon, and they're alone, or do they?
It would be 2 people per shift.
Okay.
A minimum.
We are at item 4, and this is our continuing discussion on sustainability priorities and budget. So, Commissioner Santora, since you're new and have been a part of this, we've been engaged in a process for most of the last 6 months, identifying our priorities, given some budget parameters, what our priorities would be. And so we have these 5 areas, and as you think about where you want to focus and your experience in economic development, you'd be a great partner with Jay Verada, and you can also see that Commissioner Goins is working on some green jobs initiatives, Commissioner Futterman on eco-travel, so there's lots of things you might want to connect on. So what I think I'd like to do with item 4 is if anyone has a report on A, B, C, D, or E, they are welcome to raise their hand and I'll recognize them and they can make their report. And if there's not a report, we'll move on.
I can do it now. We're part of water, so I defer to you as to where you want to slot me in. But
throw it into the water.
Perfect. Shall do.
Commissioner McCann.
I can report on product stewardship.
Please.
Now, or I can do it in the standing committee on waste reduction.
Is it already in your committee report?
Yes, it is.
If you've already put it in your committee report, let's just leave it there.
All right.
Okay? But if it's not in another committee report and you've got something to say, we'd want to hear it. Mr. Goins.
So I had a discussion with USGBC about bringing their G-Pro program to Palm Springs, which is basically a green building fundamentals program that would be taught to high schoolers and community college students. Tentatively, we're planning on running one session in May, and sometime between April and June we'll run 2 sessions, but we don't have firm dates yet. So our next steps are, we've identified the program, but now we need to find places that can help us find participants, basically. So we'll be doing some outreach work to figure out who those partners will be. Commissioner Futterman also already reached out to some folks in Desert Hot Springs, but there are a lot of other folks we could reach out to. So the plan is now the first step will be the G-Pro program, which is a green building fundamentals course. From there, if there's enough interest, we can add trade-specific programs, electrical, green cleaning, and plumbing, I believe, are 3 of the programs that are offered for high schoolers or community college students who plan to move into the trades. Or if there are high schoolers or community college students that want to engage in community projects, there's another program called Green Apple that we can also implement. And the programs are free to us to put on. All we need to be able to come up with is a room and folks who want to listen. So a class of 20 to 25 is ideal, but if there's strong interest, a smaller class might make sense. So that's kind of the plan at this point. So that's my report.
Okay. So continuing work is there action we ought to take tonight?
There's no action that the commission needs to take. At this point, I don't really see that there's going to be a cost. It'll just be commission time, but if that changes, I'll let you know.
Yes, Dara.
Your target audience, or the target people that you want to talk to are high schoolers, correct? So I know there's a job fair every year. I believe we have one at Palm Springs High School. So I could let you know what the date.
Anyone else? Great. We'll hear some other reports then during the committee reports. So we are at item F with new business. Item number 1, as I think most of you know, there are times that issues come up to us from the community or from other commissions or issues that we as commissioners raise, and that gives us discussion topics and actions that we may proceed with. There are other times that council says to us, we are interested in you looking at this or that and commenting about it. Well, we have one of those. Councilmember Roberts has asked us that we would look at the possibility of banning single-use polystyrene food containers. He forwarded to us a letter from Senator Ben Allen of the California State Senate, who is a part of a campaign to phase out polystyrene, mostly known as styrofoam. So we could have a little bit of discussion as a group, but I think it probably also makes sense to find out if there are a commissioner or two who would be interested in doing some of this research, communicating with Councilmember Roberts, finding out specifically what he might like to have us do that would help he and the council move along. So if you're inclined, that'd be an opening for you. But are there folks who would like to comment on the letter that we received from the Senator Allen? Commissioner Santora.
Does the letter suggest a legislative initiative by the senator? And if so, do we have a draft of that?
The letter refers to Senate Bill 705 to phase out packaging statewide, and it fell short of passage on the Senate floor. He says, and I quote, in the face of a deceptive campaign by chemical and plastics industry interests, end quote. So those are his words, not mine. He's an elected official, I'm not. So anyway, so at this point, what they are asking that local governments might do is adopt a resolution that would support Senate Bill 705, or certainly municipalities and other local government entities could take their own action, just like we took an action regarding single-use plastic bags a couple of years ago in advance of the statewide ban. So that's where we are as far as that. Other questions? Vice Chair Clark.
Something that I'm interested in, and we've actually talked about it a bit in the waste reduction. Looking over the letter that we got in the form that comes with it, it looks like that there are 2 actions. My first response was that we could just send this to the Waste Reduction Committee, but the question is, looking at the actions, the first one is just for somebody to make a statement that our city is in support of the state legislation. And on the form, it actually has J.R. Roberts' name. So is this something that can be, I guess I'm not really sure what the process would be, but perhaps we could recommend on it. And then, I guess it's a question for Jay.
Right, that's correct. I think Councilmember Roberts wanted to make sure an opportunity to analyze, consider it, and then
Thanks. And then the second part is really local actions to consider an ordinance like Joe referred to, local ordinance. And there could get more information about local ordinances in other municipalities. And I personally am interested in working on that in the waste reduction.
Yes, yes, Commissioner McCann.
It sounds like, yeah, we should take this on the waste reduction stuff. Do a little bit of research on if these particular forms of container for food have been banned elsewhere. What are the alternatives, and has it gone well with whatever alternatives people are using? We could research that.
So, makes sense, and I'm sure that in terms of council agenda, it isn't something they were going to get to in January anyway. So why don't we refer it to the Waste Reduction Subcommittee, and you can include it in your regular report in January, or if you need to call it out for a special agenda item with action, then just be sure that we know that so that we get it under business if there's actually a motion that you want to address. Yeah. Do you have a follow-up? Yes.
Our committee won't be meeting until after the January meeting.
Okay. You're not meeting till after January 16th,
Correct.
which is our next meeting. Okay, all right. Why don't someone ought to communicate with Councilmember Roberts. Do you want to do that, Vice Chair? Just let him know sort of our timing and what we're doing, so that he knows that we received it, we acted on it, but not tonight. All right. We are at item 2. Vice Chair Clark wanted to speak to the mayor's pledge regarding milkweeds for monarchs.
A couple of months ago, Christine Hammond was here, and she talked about the program for milkweed for monarchs, and just gave background as to what the need was, what the issue was, and so forth. And last month, I brought up briefly that there's a more formal way of getting involved in the milkweed for monarchs program through the National Wildlife Federation. And that really is related to something called the Mayor's Monarch Pledge. And what's up on the screen and what was sent out to you was just an extraction from some of the material that was on the website for the National Wildlife Foundation. And briefly looking at the top paragraph, it says that mayors and other local tribal government chief executives are taking action to help save the monarch butterfly, an iconic species whose populations have declined by 90% in the last 20 years. Essentially, cities and towns have a critical role to play in helping to save the monarch butterfly because they can formally provide habitats for monarchs. And if mayors sign up to take a stand, it's expected that people will follow. So basically what's involved in this process is there's a mayor's pledge. It's a boilerplate statement that mayors would agree to and sign, and basically attesting that our city, if we do it, would be committed to restore the habitat in the community and encourage citizens to do the same. So I see, and basically why I'm bringing this up tonight is I see our action is to, if we agree that we should do this, that perhaps a subcommittee or an ad hoc committee can be formed to work the process to perhaps develop a report and a recommendation to the mayor, try to encourage him to take the pledge. And I know Christine would be involved in quite interested as well, but she's not here tonight. So the first step would be to take the pledge, and that would be with us, for us to convince Mayor. I also see it as an important thing for us. I think it really fits into our charter as a sustainability commission to be the lead on this, even though there are other organizations in the city that would be participating, like the Desert Healthcare District, Parks and Recreation Committee. So once the pledge is taken, then step 2 is to specify actions, and you'll see some examples on the next pages in a couple of minutes. But what is requested is that we specify at least 3 specific actions that the city will initiate in the next year in order to help to restore the habitat for monarchs. We can take more actions as well. It's kind of like if you make a pledge to a museum or a symphony orchestra. You know, at one level you're silver, but if you pledge more, you're gold. And if you pledge even more, you're platinum. So we get more recognition if we pledge more than 3, but 3 is the minimum number of actions required. Once we've specified the actions, we would take the actions, and then in the course of a year, we would report the progress on an annual basis. And the data that would be collected by the National Wildlife Foundation from this report would be used to basically report on the impact of its work. So the actions are on the next 2 pages, and I won't go through all of them. They fall into 3 categories: communications and convening, basically proclamation, communicating with the citizens and perhaps having meetings, then program and demonstration gardens, and then the last one is systems change. But I wanted to really focus on the program and demonstration gardens, because in talking to Christine, there are a number of them that already have been discussed with people in the city, like the Desert Healthcare District, and doing something at Wellness Park, also just Parks and Recreations Commission, as I said, and also the Desert Water Agency. I think one specific one related to the Desert Water Agency is number 17, where it says to host or support a city monarch butterfly festival. And the DWA is already planning on doing plantings at their facility and also putting a mural on a wall. So that would already count as that action. But also actions 8, 9, and 10 are in progress through discussions that Christine has had. So really, we're on our way toward doing some of the things that are required by this program. The formal thing is to make a recommendation about taking the pledge, and that's where.
Okay, so, and it is true that we can have subcommittees that involve community members who are not sitting commissioners. And so, Christine Hammond, would you like to serve on an ad hoc committee? All right, we have one, and Vice Chair Clark has said that he's understood that Commissioner Futterman is interested. Is there anybody else who would like to be a part of it? Did you want to be in on this? Okay. Anyone else want to be involved? 3's a great number. All right, so we will assign you as a ad hoc. Yes, you're an ad hoc because you will be. We'll give you. We'll make you an ad hoc committee until June 30th, and then if something else happens, because I'm out of here that day, and you'll have to figure out a new way to do it under a new administration. So.
Private citizen you can serve.
Well, that's right. That's right. I am rather fond of butterflies. All right. Okay. Anything else we need to do about that? Okay. Perfect. Item number 3 in social media, there's been some discussion about plans for a Palm Springs remembrance for Michelle Mycian. Of course, she had a number of colleagues on city staff. She worked on the mayor's race for 5 or 6 years, so there were a cadre of volunteers in the community who knew her well, commissioners during the 7 years that she was on the staff. And her passing came, I think, as quite a shock. So, some discussion about a Palm Springs remembrance, whether or not her mother or brother, who are surviving family members, would attend is not known. But it would be a time for those of us who knew her here in the city to convene in some way. I am aware that former chair Brett Klein is interested in being involved, and former vice chair Kate Castle is interested. And I guess what I'd like to know, if you know from staff, and I had sent an email to City Manager Reddy and didn't get a response, are there any plans that are coming out of city administration that we should be aware of? Okay. So you don't have a sense, I mean, I sort of wanted to get sort of a permissive statement from David that it would be okay if I, as current chair, former chair Klein, and vice chair Castle, and whoever else sort of wanted to be involved, began to proceed with a bit. So that'd be okay?
That is an okay.
Okay. And I guess I want to ask, is there anybody else who would like to be a part of that group at this point?
I just had some people talk at City Hall here. Had one suggestion that maybe we put up a bike rack at Wellness Park, where the mayor's race was held. Maybe, get it. One suggestion. I did hear too. Commissioner Fetterman told me that she met with some former commissioners, and they are planning a bike ride or trail hike, probably in January. And I heard today too that Michelle's family is planning some kind of remembrance in January. However, that will be in Florida.
In Florida, okay, all right. Yes, I think some of the folks who were a part of active transportation, and Michelle worked on a lot of the bike routes, they were thinking that they might do a bike ride in remembrance. So that's all good. And what I think we'll do is I'll talk to Brett and Kate, and we'll keep you in on the loop, Dan, so that we're not we don't miss anything, and we'll see if there can be something. And it might be maybe it'll be toward the end of January or early February. With holidays in here, we're probably going to lose 10 days in terms of. We'll try to get something scheduled, and we'll communicate with you so that we're sure that it's at a time when city staff who would want to participate might be able to participate. And so most city staff are still Monday through Thursday, 7 to 6, or what are the core hours these days? 7 to 6? Okay, all right. So okay. All right. Any other comments from? All right, we are at committee and commissioner reports, and our first one is Solar and Green Building, Commissioner Friedman.
Okay. Follow up on solar.
I'll cheat and use your notes. Oh, you didn't? Okay. Well, I'll just go for it. So we had a meeting where we got all of the speakers together just a few days ago here, and so everybody's on the same page, knows what they're going to be talking about. We have an outline for our session, and our speakers are going to be Dominique Hargraves of USGBC, Derek
Smith, I believe.
Smith of the LA chapter of the American Society of Interior Designers, And we will have Maureen Gilmer, who's a columnist for the Desert Sun, who does an article about landscaping and horticulture, speak. And I will serve as the MC. There are 120 seats available in the room. And at last check, 25% were already taken. So we're getting a pretty good response. But if there's anything that you could do to help promote the event, that'd be helpful. I mean, Modernism Week has its own inertia. Thousands of people come from across the country, so we're hoping that will help us. But if you have other ways that you might want to suggest to us about how we can promote it, we'd be happy to hear that. And come attend also.
Okay, just quickly on that, I'll follow up at DWA is presenting at the Brown Bag on Thursday, so I'm publicizing this at 1 p.m. We did receive an invoice for, was it $1,000? I didn't look at it. 500, okay. We'll refer that to you guys and see if that can be covered in the Okay, a couple of things on solar. I had a chance to confirm with Councilmember Middleton, and I believe what City Council is expected to consider at one of its 3 meetings next week, next month, resolution that would direct the Planning Commission to require solar on new single and multifamily housing projects whenever there's discretionary approval by the Planning Commission. So projects as of right would not be covered, but if Planning Commission has to approve a variance or other approval, covered here. The mandate would be aligned with what has already been proposed by the Energy Commission in the 2019 code to go into effect in 2020. That number already exists. I think it's fairly likely to stay with what the Energy Commission has proposed. It's slightly higher for our climate zone, slightly higher than the 2 watts per square foot. So I think for a 2,000 square foot house, it would be like 4,200 watts. So that's 2.1 as opposed to 2, but it's not, it's not that far from what we proposed. So that would go, and that would be just a resolution to the Planning Commission. That being said, once that goes through, I know Councilmember Middleton and perhaps other members of council would consider later on in the year doing a mandate that would cover the renovations, which is also part of our proposal, and that would be the 2 watts per square foot. So essentially, the part that the state will do in 2020 mandatory would be covered by the Planning Commission resolution as essentially a gap filler until the state requirement goes into effect. But because the state energy code largely applies to new construction as opposed to renovation, Palm Springs could still potentially have a mandate to cover the renovation. So this would be consistent. We would, if that happens in 2018, the commission will very largely have satisfied the goals set forth in our resolution last December. So that's good news there. Second is Desert Community Energy. You recall we had a presentation from Katie Barrows of CVAG this past spring. So that's the Community Choice Aggregation Program. They adopted its implementation plan earlier this month. Councilmember Coors is the Palm Springs delegate to that body. The switchover from Southern California Edison provided generation is expected to occur on July 1. DCE, the CCA program, intends to start with a 35% renewable supply. So from the very beginning, you will be getting a higher percentage of renewable energy from the CCA program that you would be getting from SE, which is roughly 20%, and they'll ramp up to 50% and more, but starting in 2024. And you can also potentially 100% renewable option. So I'll follow up with Katie Barrows, and I'd like to see our commission take a lead in coordinating with CVAG to publicize this. It's an opt-out system, so the message to the community is please don't do anything, and you will, as I put in my plug, you can save green and go green. So I'd like us to take an active role, and Jay, I'll follow up with you to see how we can publicize it on our website, and I know Katie's at 1 PS Brown Bag, I believe, in April.
So let me just follow up. So you're saying, when you said July 1 of 18,
2018, yes. So this
switch
is
from SCE to the community.
this is
aggregate.
absolutely going
Okay.
live. Very good news.
That's quick.
Yeah.
Government rarely moves that quickly, ever. Okay. Huh. Okay, well, that will take, I mean, if, probably your best hope is nobody knows it's happening, and then they won't opt out, because if people find out that there's some sort of switch, that's going to be a surprise. So I'm not sure how you want to approach that PR move, but
There will be.
you all should
yeah.
talk about it.
Yeah, yeah. There'll be, I'll follow up with Director Verada, and we can agendize this for our next solar meeting for January, to discuss this. There will be communications from CVAG, which are required by the CPUC, so that you have to tell people you do this. But what we can do, our objective is to how to reinforce that message, is to say the rates are likely to be slightly less and you can be greener. So those are, I think, the two key takeaways for that. So we'll follow up and we'll agendize that for our next meeting on January 8th.
So Commissioner Friedman, the other thing I wanted to ask about, at the end where you have a budget request, it said budget request for 2018-19. Is that what you meant? Or did you mean 17-18? It was in the green building and solar report at the end.
That is for our discussions. That is for 18-19, because
It is for
that's our
18.
discussions
Okay.
that I believe we referred to last month, of having a follow-up ZNE something or another in the following fiscal year. So that's been parked until after Modernism
Okay.
Week.
All right.
So you will hear back from us as part of the discussions, but that would be a budget request for 2018-19 or a follow-up on ZNE for next fiscal year, probably next fall.
Other questions of Commissioner Friedman? Thank you. We're at item 2, the Standing Committee on Waste Reduction. Commissioner McCann and Vice Chair Clark.
All right, we had 2 items that we submitted in our report this month. The first one we've already dealt with. The other one that we've been looking at, and I went over some of the background for it in last month's meeting, which is for disposal of household hazardous waste, and that includes batteries, sharp products, paint, and the like. We did discover, and I reported last month, that the city of Palm Springs had a curbside pickup program, and we did some more research, and I'm going to report on that a little bit here. It turns out that this curbside program was began in 2000, and it was actually discontinued in 2010. And what happened probably is that it was discontinued because the scheduled pickups in this program dropped from greater than 50 in the year 2000 down to just 9 in 2010. So I don't have any more information about why that happened. It was probably an education issue. Now, the city of Rancho Mirage still has this program in place with this company, and they're maintaining pickups of over 100 per year, working somewhere else in the valley. The cost, however, is $140 per collection, and so I did a simple extrapolation to the equivalent collection level for the city of Palm Springs if we were able to match what they're doing. And that cost for us then would go up to about $35,000 a year. They had a couple of suggestions that we could go for pickup centers, that they would come around at certain times of the year to try to cut down the cost. But that's where we are with it at the moment. The thing is that there's, well, I'm going to leave this, I think, to Roy.
We've been talking in our committee for months and have been reporting here about a possible program for recycling household batteries. And the concept that we've had is to try to identify drop-off points around the city. There are a couple now that we know of, but they're clustered in one part of the city. We'd like to have drop-off points all around the city at stores, perhaps City Hall, maybe the library, so forth. Places where people could come and used batteries, used household batteries, and then they would be sent someplace to be recycled. Part of that program that we've been talking about would be to develop and issue reusable bags that people could pick up and bring to their homes, and when they had used batteries, drop-off points. And the vision would be we would use these bags to publicize, your sustainable city, and it would be tying together a lot. One piece that still needed some research is where the batteries would go after they were picked up. In November, I talked a bit about having gotten some information from a company called Battery Solutions. They're located in Illinois. And on Monday, I talked to a lady there about their programs for recycling batteries. And they do have a facility there that takes used batteries and uses magnets and mechanical action to take them apart. And for example, alkaline batteries, which are the most common batteries that we use. Those batteries, the main constituents are zinc, manganese, inside the batteries, steel for the case, and then paper and plastic. Their process can actually destroy the batteries and come up with separate piles of zinc, manganese, powder, steel, cases, and paper. And those materials could then be sold elsewhere for reuse. And that's the way we see recycling done in other areas too, where what's brought in is broken down into raw materials. Zinc manganese powder, for example, can be used in fertilizers. Anyway, they have a plant that does that, and they have programs for having individuals or cities ship batteries to them. The simplest way is an individual could buy a little bucket with a prepaid label and have that bucket in their house and put their batteries in there, and when the bucket is full, ship it off to Solutions. But what she talked about is a program where we could get from them basically all plastic cylinders that could be placed at the drop-off points, and we could have them customized. City of Palm Springs logo. It would be placed at the drop-off points, and then people would then bring their batteries there in their little bags and drop them into the containers. And along with that, at the drop-off points would have some of these buckets, so that when the plastic drop-off containers were filled, the batteries solutions and recycle. Battery Solutions would automatically send back to the drop-off point next time. So this sounds like a good approach, one approach that we would like to investigate. Turns out that the city of Indio is doing that, and we have a contact point there. So this looks like a good approach. It needs more investigation, and we're still talking to Desert Arc, which picks up batteries at about what they do with batteries that they receive. The progress that we're making, more to come.
Are there questions of Commissioner McCann or Vice Chair Clark? Thank you. We're moving along quite a bit of things. All right, we are at item 3, active transportation. Anything from Commissioner Wilson or Commissioner Goff?
Just that we met on November 30th, and we're looking to set up a meeting with Savat to see if there's a role for our ad hoc committee moving forward with the planning effort going forward.
Well, just that we were able to confirm that the 50,000 match that we were discussing has been met through the Talquitz master plan, so we aren't looking for any money from the Sustainability Commission for that. I see John smiling.
Hey, we're all smiling. Good, thank you. Any questions of Commissioners Wilson or Gothier? Oh, yes, I'm sorry.
I have just
Please.
a quick statement. Unfortunately, Savat will be leaving the employ of the city at the end of next
week. We hope he's going to bigger and better things somewhere, whatever, yeah. All right, we're at item 5, water.
Okay, this is a follow-up of our previous discussions. Stacy took some time out of her very busy schedule to meet with me at the end of last month, and I took what I prepared for you for last month's meeting and essentially annotated to reflect my notes with Stacy, and she's moving ahead with some of the projects. The one point that I would like to sort of focus on is coming up with perhaps a proposal, and that would be an action item for a recommendation, I guess, for our 2018-2019 budget, that we do have a water conservation incentive program. We have had that in particular for turf buybacks and toilet rebates, and I'm not sure we ever got around to implementing waterless urinals, but we did sort of, we did have it before.
We talked about it.
We talked about it before. We obviously, given finances of the commission, didn't move forward, but I would like to at least propose that we consider that for 2018-2019 budget. Obviously, I don't think we know how much would be available, but I would suggest something like $25,000 as a start to do that. One of the drivers for this is that the State Water Resources Control Board has proposed rulemaking. They're just finishing up the comment period to make permanent many of the restrictions that were imposed during the drought. And one of the restrictions that was in effect and likely to come back sooner rather than later is a prohibition on irrigation of turf on public medians or publicly owned or maintained landscaped areas between the street and the sidewalk. So not only would this affect the city, as it already has during the drought period, but I believe a number of HOAs, although it's city property, I think the HOAs are very often responsible for maintaining that area between the sidewalk and the street. Our neighborhood, which many years ago was an HOA, is now just our residents, but we have converted that area and do maintain it on behalf of the city, even though we know it's a city easement. So this would be in particular, the HOAs are doing something. They are actually maintaining city property out of their own funds. So if we can do something to help them out, because they can't water, it's going to be ugly and it borders the city sort of streets. So that would be kind of the priority of, for example, you get $1 per square foot for up to 1,000 feet. And of course, DWA does have their program, so it would be matching some DWA funds. So that would be the major incentive. And I think that would be greatly appreciated by the neighborhoods of sort of a partnership between the city and the HOAs.
Questions of Commissioner Friedman? I'll make a comment. Never miss a chance to sermonize. I'm delighted that your second bullet point makes reference to replacing turf around the airport entrance fountain, because the folks at the Airport Commission have always resisted removing the turf. There's huge amounts of turf on El Cielo, and for a city in the middle of the desert with beautiful desert landscaping opportunities, an opportunity for us to show off pristine desert landscaping. Welcome our guests seems to make so much sense, and we've talked about it in the past, and I'm glad to see at least just a little teaser about that.
Patricia Breslin, whom I know fairly well from 1PS, was named, I believe, last year to the Airport Commission, so I've already kind of put a bug in her ear. And what I will do is, in the new year, schedule a 3 minutes public comment to the Airport Commission, more if they would be available. And this would be a project that, having spoken to DWA, the Airport Commission could go to DWA and ask for a full $2 or maybe even a little bit more, because for a demonstration project, normally their subsidy or rebate is $1 per square foot. But for high visibility projects, and this certainly would be one of them, we could ask for the DWA board to approve the full subsidy of $2. So I've had that discussion already with Ashley.
Yep. Entrance to the airport is pretty much a high visibility spot, so that would be great. Thank you, David. Any other questions? We are at item H, Commissioner comments. Just, I think we failed to note, we did set a date for the Dunn Road trip. That's January 4th. For those of you who previously responded to Dan, I don't know if you still have any more slots available on that ride or not.
It depends on what kind of vehicles we can obtain.
All right. All right.
It has to be four-wheel drive. It has,
Sure.
The roads have potholes.
Right. And Savat's departure may affect. We'll have to.
That will not affect.
Well, okay.
I checked
okay, not
with.
affect the trip, but we'll have to be sure we maintain continuity. All right. Any other commissioner comments? Then, hearing none, our next regular meeting is on the third Tuesday of January, January 16th, 5 o'clock, here in the large conference room. And is there a motion that we adjourn?
So moved.
So moved from Commissioner Gauthier. Second? Second from Commissioner Goins. All in favor say yes. Yes. And we are adjourned.